the community lands on a position that you just don't think is right, you just don't think is defensible, and you have the temerity to express your dissent, well, now you're worse than an outsider. You're a heretic. You're a betrayer. 2016, when I refused to endorse Donald Trump and Cornel refused to endorse Hillary Clinton, we were suddenly no longer members of good standing in communities that had celebrated us. But we just said, no, we can't go along with this.
And any time empathy is viewed as an enemy and cruelty is viewed as a strategy, you know you're not in a moral zone. You know not in an ethical place. And if you want to be in an ethical place, or at least make an effort to be, then it requires some Socratic self-examination and some prophetic courage to tell the truth, even if they're going to cut your neck off.
And that's left as well as right. Cornel, does that mean, if I may, that in order to adjudicate and have a constructive discussion about Gaza, that it's a mic drop point to show a photograph of a neighborhood that's been physically destroyed by Israel's bombs?
No,
That's
there's no such thing as a mic drop point, though, brother. The the argument must be relentless. It's endless. And people are changing their minds, we hope, if they're taking claims seriously, evidence seriously, pictures seriously, and so forth and so on. But to the degree to which you think we can just reach a conversation stopper, which is Richard Rorty's language. He was my dear brother and teacher. He's wrong as two left shoes in that regard. It's got to go on.
You know, Robert, what you said about 3 beats ago could be excerpted as this just lesson in wisdom, you know, perfectly put. I mean, you're correct. That's just true. There's truth there, that is the way we should approach these things. And I think most people would not disagree, except I wonder how far they could go in actually applying it when it's about something they have emotions about. And so everything you said is true, but then, whoops, Gaza. And I think we know, especially in university culture, the typical person just thinks settler colonialism, and that's it. And there is no other view. And if you have another view, you get something thrown in your face. I get the feeling that for many people, all of that sounds lovely, but more if you're arguing about whether or not people should smoke cigarettes or about even Marxism, but not whiteness and power.
John, be careful because the point cuts both ways. I mean, there are mic drop claims on all sides of that dispute. So, you know, it's not just the settler colonialism out, therefore Israel bad. It's also the Hamas are the Nazis, and therefore Gaza has to be destroyed. I mean, that's also a similarly emotion-driven point. I mean, isn't it? You know. So anyway.
In terms of universities, the fact that 13 universities can be destroyed, every brick, and not one university professor in the United States can say a mumbling word about the massive demolishing of universities, laboratories, dorms, and so forth and so on. No, because they think if they say that, they'll be viewed as pro-Palestinian. It's just a matter of trying to speak a truth that cuts through all kinds of different contexts. And if we're in a situation where we can't speak truths that cut across context, then we're just locked into our own narrow tribal perspectives, and the humanistic perspectives gets crushed. Well, some of us are going to be humanistic till the day we die, even if we're a little small group in a corner.
I could go back just for a moment to the challenge that Cornel presented to you and to me, Glenn. If you read the book, if you read Truth Matters, the book that Cornel and I have just put out, we get into a wrestling match at one point where Cornel is basically accusing me of being a rationalist, and I'm essentially accusing Cornel of being a fideist. I want to try to reason my way to my conclusions every time. And Cornel insists that no, there are some times when reason just gives out. You still have to take a stand, and you do that on the basis of a leap of faith, and maybe one that's informed by your aesthetic sense or something other than the sort of strict rational evaluation of arguments that I present. Now, as we wrestle with each other, what are we forcing each other to do? If you read the book, you'll see we're forcing each other to modify and to enter caveats and to enter nuances. And pretty soon it becomes clear that, we're not once we've got things clarified, once we've got the caveats in, once we have the nuances, we're not far apart as it appeared at the beginning when I was a rationalist and he was a fideist. Now, we still disagree. He's still fundamentally a Kierkegaardian. I'm still fundamentally an Aristotelian. We do disagree about that. But it turns out that disagreement is not as
That's true.
wide as you would think at the beginning. Yeah.
Now, you're both Christians, no?
Yeah, that's also a point. That's also a point of commonality. But before we go to that, I want to go to John's the point John just made, which I think is really important, and I don't want to drop it. It's about our emotional investment in our convictions. So here's the way I see it. I think we human beings quite naturally tend to wrap our emotions more or less tightly around our convictions. Our convictions help to form our identities. Some of the communities that we belong to and we value our belonging to are communities of shared conviction. So we wrap our emotions more or less tightly around our convictions. That's the human condition. Now, that's not wrong in itself. In fact, in itself, it's a good thing. If we didn't make some emotional investment in our convictions, we really would never act on our convictions, not just when it comes to big causes, civil rights or whatever your cause is. It's not just that we wouldn't go out and do the big things. We wouldn't do even ordinary things. It's one thing to believe, it would be a nice thing to get the kids up in the morning, get them washed up, get them dressed, get them fed and off to school. But unless you have some emotional investment in that, it's just going to be a good idea and you're never actually going to do it. You need an emotional investment in it in order to get it done. And of course, the same is true when it comes to making sacrifices for good causes, taking risks, advocating, getting people upset. So forth and so on. So it's not bad in itself. But here's the thing. If we wrap our emotions too tightly around our convictions, and it is a perennial temptation to do that, we become dogmatists. We become ideologues. We refuse to listen to somebody else's point of view, and we want a point of view that challenges the convictions that we've emotionally so invested in to be suppressed, to be shut down. And then that's the end of truth-seeking. We become tribalists, pure, simple tribalists. And we don't want to be that. The plea that Cornel and I are making in Truth Matters is don't be a tribalist. This is a very anti-tribalist book. Now, that's a hard argument to make to people because we really do value our membership in communities that are partly communities of conviction. And Cornel and I both have this experience, and I'll bet you guys too have it too. And that is, you're a member of a community, you're a member of good standing in a community, you're even an admired member of the community, you're treated as a spokesman for the community. But then the community lands on a position that you just don't think is right. You just don't think is defensible. And you have the temerity to express your dissent. Well, now you're worse than an outsider. You're a heretic. You're a betrayer. You're Judas Iscariot.
Tell me about it.
Cornel and I can tell you about 2016 when I refused to endorse Donald Trump and Cornel refused to endorse Hillary Clinton. We were suddenly no longer members of good standing in communities that had celebrated us. But we just said, no, we can't go along with this.
Absolutely.
You're out.
Absolutely. And any time empathy is viewed as an enemy and cruelty is viewed as a strategy, you know you're not in a moral zone. You know you're not in an ethical place. And if you want to be in an ethical place, or at least make an effort to be, then it requires some Socratic self-examination and some prophetic courage to tell the truth, even if they're going to cut your neck off.
And that's left as well as right. Yeah.